Kitalé Wilson, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Mate, there is probably no place that I would rather be right now than sitting on your family's farm having a coffee with you. How are you feeling, brother?
After a ride.
After a ride.
Feeling so good. It's been nice to be home,
Yeah.
hanging with friends, riding horses.
Where do you spend most of your time these days?
Kind of splitting between spending a lot of time in the UK at the moment.
Yeah.
That's where I've been basing out of, and then kind of making the jump across to whatever projects call to me. So last year was big. I was in Norway, I was in Iraq, I was in New York, I was in all these places.
Man, I thought we traveled a lot, and then I was talking to you last year. I was like, your itinerary is gnarly.
Yeah, I feel like coming into this year, I'm like, let's just like slow it down a bit.
But it's been so nice to watch your journey almost like from afar, because I know like we did a lot, we did a bit when we were a bit younger, linked up in New Zealand, obviously like family, friends, and just like the fact that you've like gone away and you're kind of like on this exploration throughout your early to mid 20s, and you're just doing like the most coolest things, like working on these really amazing projects, and they have really incredible storylines, and then you love doing your own adventure, which I'm really keen to talk about today. But sitting back and almost just like looking at it from afar and then talking to your family about it, it's so cool the way you're navigating life at the minute.
Yeah, and I think like you mentioned, we probably like last hung out when I just left high school. Had very little idea what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
And I think looking back on all those, it's been like 7 years or something since then. And I had no idea I'd be in the field I'm working in, kind of being inspired by the people I'm inspired by, or trying to, achieve the things I want to do and stuff. But every kind of step in that journey has been like a little like piece that I'm adding to, change the direction I want to go in and those feelings and stuff. But yeah, I feel like it only really hits like kind of that arc of like, oh wow, like I didn't know I wanted to be a filmmaker. I didn't know I like really enjoyed exploration and adventure. But then I come home and there's all these little things that remind you of like, I studied aviation engineering for 2 years.
Yeah, what the hell?
What was I doing?
Yeah.
But yeah, when you come home, I feel like you get to revisit a lot of those places, especially riding around. Like even this morning,
man,
this whole property was where I spent my entire like youth.
Because when did you move here? How old were you when you moved to this property?
When I moved here, yeah.
Right. And just to give context for those who are listening and like not watching this podcast, we're sitting out kind of like in the stables of Kitalé's family property or family home. And I always I've come out here a little bit over the last couple of years, and I always feel so peaceful. Like it's always so nice. I don't know. I think it's something to do with the environment, the nature, and the landscape. I also think it's something to do with the people and like the experiences that we've had out here. But man, like getting up here early this morning, like you showed me how to put the saddle on the horse, jump on the horse. We went
gave you a crash course.
Gave you a quick little crash course, and then like had a beautiful little ride out there. So it must be like super special to be able to come back home.
Yeah,
especially after all the travel you've been doing. Yeah,
100%. It's just a point of rest. I think when you leave, when you leave your hometown, you come back and it always feels really different. You feel like you've changed. It hasn't, or it's changed in ways you don't like. But I'm really lucky I think I'm still really compelled to, live afar, go on these projects and stuff like that kind of take me across the world.
Yeah.
But my home and my family here and my friends here have become a real point of rest in my life. I can come back and kind of rest and recharge and reflect. I think it's important to have those little areas in your life to do that.
Why do you think it's important to rest?
I think it's definitely person by person, and everyone has a different nervous system and a different energy and stuff like that. Certainly for me, I think I don't have a problem getting moving in the morning. I don't have a problem doing stuff. I feel like as I've maybe matured as an artist, as a person, I've realized that really my like biggest barrier to entry for creative ideas or just being more present has just been like not doing stuff. I'm such like I can fill my day with like an immeasurable amount of like things to do. So I feel like my learning curve has been really that idea of slowing down.
Yeah.
I have this like mantra, which is like distrust the sense of urgency.
Okay.
I feel like it probably comes from a bit of being on an expedition. Everything's moving, everything's very fast. But I feel like I, as a young man, really had this like rush, eagerness, this like haste to me, which I definitely dip into every now and then. Yeah. But I think like I've found a lot of reflection, in kind of being maybe more intentional and slowing it down and really trying to like, we were chatting about morning schedules before and stuff. And yeah, like you're like, do you journal? I'm like, I think if I'd started journaling and my mind would start racing. And I do journal for sure, but I feel like my mornings are always like trying to slow it down.
Yeah.
Because my mind can just like start whirring up and it won't stop for the day.
Especially in the world that we live in these days where everything is so fast paced and we're getting all these like really gnarly dopamine hits on our phone. You mentioned that you hate getting on your phone. I was like, bro, I love hearing that.
Yeah.
It's almost like we are in such a fast paced world. So the ability to be able to like step away from that, however you want to do that, I think is really, really cool. Do you find that your, I guess, like creativity or like the pride in the work that you do is elevated when you do give yourself that time to rest?
Yeah, to a degree. I think like probably talking what you were talking about, more about like attention span and rest and stuff like that. Like we're all guilty of it. Let's like just spending mindless amounts of time online.
Yeah.
But I think as artists, as creative minds, it's really important to remember that like your mind is kind of acting as a sponge throughout the day, throughout your whole life, and what you're putting in can really, really influence you. Just as social media can be an amazing source of like inspiration for where you want something to look, this finding stories, connecting with people. I think it can also just fill those gaps that could be filled with, you know, reading or books and these certain things that are going to really elevate you in your understanding of art and your understanding of storytelling.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the way I view it more. It's like less a distraction. It's more just like you have a very limited bandwidth of how much data you can really take on. And if we're just filling that with this kind of, and it's passive watching as well. We're not really like intentionally being like, I'm going to watch this reel. You're just being fed it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, I'm the first one to say that I get stuck in the reel circuit, but I think I really do love this idea of when you think you're going to read a book, when you choose to read a book, you choose to read it and you read it. When you choose to watch a film, you choose to watch it and you watch it. Like there's some intention there if you really know what you're about to be exposed to. But yeah, I think I almost see it as a bit of an act of social rebellion, just slowing down a bit and trying to be a bit more present.
What type of content do you like to consume? Like reading, movies, like what's your
what
do you like?
Go through seasons. Sometimes I'll be in a bit of a film season, sometimes a bit of a book season. Coming home this time, I feel like I've been less reading. I feel like I've done that thing where you sit down to read a book.
Yeah.
You get like 2 pages in, go and do something else.
Yeah,
like,
gotcha.
I can't really force it. But I've been on a big movie grind.
Really?
Yeah, watching like a lot of the Oscar nominations and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Revisiting some older films and stuff.
Well, man, I'm keen to talk about like a lot of the films that you've created. Before we do dive into that, man, I'm really kind of curious around, and I think probably a lot of people listening will be really curious around, because you've been in the adventure space and you've been in filmmaking and directing and you're in this like kind of really unique spot. A lot of people that I've spoken about you to or who know you really well, they say you're really like, I guess like old, like wise soul for someone who's so young, because you're 24?
25, just
25, just heard 25. So you're like
turning the corner.
So yeah, you're over the quarter life crisis.
Yeah.
But everyone's like so wise for like got a good head on your shoulders for such a young kid. What do you think the experiences that you had growing up that kind of led you down the path of being who you are and wanting to get into filmmaking and adventure?
Firstly, thanks for calling me wise.
I'll take that.
I don't get that one. I don't get that one every day. I'd be lying if I didn't say I had a pretty unique childhood.
Horses in the background. That's so cool.
Horses whinnying. Yeah.
They're going off.
If they keep it up, we might just throw out some.
No, they're good, mate. Let them go. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I kind of said that I didn't have a very unique childhood into a unique, early adult life. And now I'm 25, so I guess I'm like a full adult now. I don't know. I feel like a kid still.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a super adventurous family. My parents, from the age of 5, took us on a sailing boat, and we lived on a sailing boat for 2 years. And then when I came back, they were always taking us on trips around. We lived in this like small townhouse before we moved here, and their whole premise was, we're not going to renovate the house, but we're going to like take you over like Christmas. We're going to do like a 2-week trip somewhere random in the world.
Wow. And
so got to do like a lot of traveling as a young kid through Africa, Southeast Asia.
What do you think that does to a young kid, like seeing the world at such a young age?
I'm probably going to say this a lot this morning, but it's like, there's just two sides to it. It exposes you to a lot of the beauty of the world, stunning places, incredible cultures, and you get to kind of see that duality of maybe a bit of the darkness as well. Like 5 years old to 7 years old, I was like living on a boat in Indonesia, and you know, you're playing soccer with little village kids and stuff like that, and it's so beautiful and peaceful. And then you see that like, oh wow, like these kids like don't even have anything to sleep on or don't have any food and stuff like that. So it gives you a lot of perspective. I think where that came to a head was maybe coming back after those trips at a young age and coming back into kind of the Australian schooling system, Australian society, and feeling pretty strange. I don't think I was able to articulate it till a lot later in my life, but I'd been like through these very formative experiences in a world where at such a young time where you're seeing different cultures and everyone's so open and kind and welcoming, and then you come back to maybe Australian society and it feels very, very foreign to you as a young kid. But maybe coming back to your question, yeah, I wouldn't really consider myself wise or anything like that, but I think for my age, I probably just lived a lot of life. Yeah. In both the adventure side of things and now as a writer and filmmaker, that lends itself to a natural curiosity. And I think probably the root answer of the question you're asking is just, I think I'm a pretty innately curious person.
Yeah.
I think specifically documentary filmmaking requires a way of seeing the world and kind of an eye in seeing the world, of kind of accepting nothing as is. Everything kind of has a story to tell. Even like the most, you know, mundane person on the street kind of has an interesting story you can pull out. And I've kind of always been that way. And a lot of that just came from traveling. Yeah. Traveling and adventures. And
spending 2 years on a boat in Indonesia would just be, I imagine, such an incredible experience.
So incredible. And then you've got to come back to, you know, grade 1.
Yeah.
Oh no, grade 2. I missed grade 1. I feel like you do hear a lot, and it is definitely coming from a place of privilege. So I want to be like careful there of being like, go and travel, you know, you expose yourself to these things and stuff. And like some people don't have the opportunity, but I do feel like just gaining other perspectives in life is such an asset. Seeing how other people live, how other cultures do things. One, I think in an era where we know through social media that algorithms are really trying to divide and put us into little groups. When you go into a foreign place and experience, you know, a foreign culture or religion, I feel like it's very hard to kind of stay in that box.
Yeah.
And I think I'd obviously had like a really adventurous childhood, and then had that period, you know, 17 to 20 where you're just like, what am I doing? Like, who am I? Went for a gap year, wanted answers there, didn't find any, studied for 2 years, civil aviation, which makes no sense because it was just such a, I think looking back on it now, people just laugh at me doing, you know, going to university and doing those things. But each of those things kind of brought me to where I am now, and you start to figure out your path. What I'm getting to, when I got into film, I feel like perhaps why I really thrived in it, but also really enjoyed it, is I think as storytellers, which I would just like baseline, before I'm a writer, before I'm a filmmaker, before I'm a photographer, it's just like storytelling, which is something that's like old as time. I think like for a lot of young storytellers, you view kind of maybe your skills to tell a story or your ability to tell a story, I view it kind of as like you have a collection of stories in your life that you've been exposed to and that you've been shown or heard of. And I think as Australians, we love telling stories. So I've been very, very lucky in that sense. But, you know, I think going and traveling, going to experience the world, having new experiences is just kind of filling your wallet with those stories. And I've been surprised at like the smallest interactions around the world, how they've inspired work I've done or inspired little interactions or directions and approaches.
Can you give me an example?
One of the recent films I did was called A Silent Rebellion, which was following a journey I did with my father through Iceland. We rode horses through Iceland. And, you know, in the pre-production for that, I was passing through London, about to head home, get ready for this shoot. And I went to the, the art museum there and kind of stumbled into this exhibit of Dutch realism paintings. And was just like, spent like 6 hours there, was just blown away by like these paintings. They were kind of like these like really gnarled, really intense nautical landscapes, like seas getting like ships getting blown away at sea and like beautiful like sprawling coastlines, but just the way they were painted were just stunning with light and stuff. And then I think like you experience that, you hear about the stories of these guys going on these adventures, these people going on these adventures, and you kind of like tuck that away in your mind. And then when it came to shooting A Silent Rebellion, I was working with a really talented cinematographer, Dominic Gould, and we were chatting about how we wanted it to feel. And I just, kind of brought up these Dutch realism paintings and we're like, yeah, that's how we want it to feel.
Right. I remember, I think you sent me like a little clip of like some of the landscapes that you were looking at. And man, it was just incredible. Like it was almost like white, like white. And then just like you and your dad like rolling through. And I remember thinking, I was like, this could be one of the coolest things like I think I've ever seen. And it's even cooler because like I actually get to like know you guys. Which is even cooler,
getting to see it like screen at Banff and just on the big screen. Like I wasn't there, but getting to like just imagine just those frames of it's pulling from like a painting to film, that's probably what I mean by like you're just like kind of grabbing something, tucking it away. But if you weren't curious, you'd be like, that's really interesting, and just keep moving. Like,
but it must be something. It must be really beautiful seeing something all the way through as well. Like this little idea that you had from looking at the Dutch paintings to talking to Dom to actually going out with your dad, capturing this beautiful thing, and then also the fact that you're like in a Banff like film festival is just insane. Like I didn't play it down a little bit, but that's huge, right? In the film space.
Film's got such like a high barrier for entry.
Yeah.
I think if you're a painter, you can get your canvas and just let it rip.
Yeah.
Like go for it.
Yeah.
I think what always like frustrated me with filmmaking was the barrier of entry. Like you need to get your equipment and permission and generally financing and all these different things. Now a bit further on, I really thrive in that because you get to build your team. It's a very like, a film isn't really made by one person. That's like a real like misconception. Yeah. It's a real team effort. There's obviously someone like the director that's kind of guiding it and seeing it, go from the idea of like a concept into something that's like actually watchable.
Yeah.
But I think film is such a process, and I feel like whenever I'm starting a new project, you kind of need to have that. Probably just as if you're going to run a marathon, you don't go into it lightly. You kind of need to like G yourself up and be like, okay, you ready for this? Because it's going to be like a long thing. Like,
how do you know which film or which projects to put your energy into? Like, how do you know like which is the right one?
Yeah, I feel like it's just taking time. Taste is a really, really big thing.
Yeah,
that's like probably the two elements and I'll just like speak broadly as like artists, like talent and taste, like kind of your two basic, probably like talent, taste, and technique would be like your like three categories of skills.
Yeah.
Technique you can kind of learn through books, through YouTube. We got so much there.
University of YouTube.
Talent can just come from anything, but I think it can be a bit of like I don't know, it can kind of evaporate. You might have someone that's a super talented photographer or filmmaker, but maybe they can't relate to people and stuff. Yeah. But taste is a massive one. And taste comes just from exposure to books, to films, to these things. You need to be a real like student of your craft. I think it's just the idea of me trying to figure out what stories do I want to tell? Who am I as a filmmaker? Building kind of that filmic voice, that artistic voice has just come from watching really, really beautiful films and understanding that, oh, wow, what moved me? Okay, it was that. Okay, what did I like about that? It was this particular element. And I think it kind of came to this idea of I'm really interested in like human stories.
Yeah. It's kind of like, well, to be honest, all the people that I'm like really interested in, they have like layers to them. They're not just Kitalé, the filmmaker, Kitalé, who also loves filmmaking, but also loves adventure, who also loves riding horses, who also likes music and film and have like all these different layers to a person. And
what does that like tell you about? Because some people are not like that. Some people are like fundamentalists. Like, I do this one thing.
I'm a football player.
Yeah.
I like footy.
I'd say I'm very much the same. I feel like a lot of the people in my life that inspire me are like multifaceted. Like, they're not like, I just do this.
Yeah, man.
I feel like the people that I've met that are fundamentalists in the sense of like, I'm just a filmmaker, or I'm just this. It's like, it can be really like two-dimensional of like, okay, what are you doing outside of those things? And it's impressive for sure. And everyone's on kind of their own journey, but yeah, I'd agree with you. Like, people that inspire me are those ones that just have like a range.
But then to push back on that, I imagine like the people who are like the best in their field or like the best at what they do, I imagine they're probably pretty narrow-minded in what they want to do, like Kobe Bryant, basketball, or any like Tom Brady, NFL. Their life is that. So they put everything into it. I know like some guys that I've played with who are the best,
Yeah.
they're obsessed.
Yeah.
Like they love that one little thing and they
Yeah.
don't do anything outside of it. And so I constantly playing. I was just like, well, I'm curious. Like I probably would rather hang out with people with a lot of layers versus just the one person.
Well, yeah, success doesn't mean that you're like the nicest person to be around either. The successful person that's like, of course, if you're obsessed with something, you're probably going to get pretty good at it.
Of course. Yeah.
I'd want to hope so. Otherwise, what's the point of being obsessed with it?
For sure.
I remember watching the podcast you did with Lockie Jones, and you were asking him about, what would be the best outcome. And his description was beautiful. It was like just being with his family and just, having a really balanced life.
Yeah.
I think there's seasons to push and pull, but I really think balance is something that we've been kind of circling around that. You're asking me about like, what does your morning look like? I feel like so much of my life revolves around this balance of opposites. Like seasons of really diving into work, seasons of really diving into other people's work and like balancing those. It's almost like a sponge, like you're kind of soaking up water, you're kind of expelling it.
Yeah.
And that's been the rhythm that I've really found works for me.
Really?
If you're trying to, I find if I try to do both at once, where I'm like trying to work on my own stuff and trying to like watch a bunch of other people's stuff, it can sometimes feel like they're kind of clashing with one another and they're maybe like fusing together, and I don't want that.
So is it a matter of like saying no to these people who are like, hey, can you like watch this thing for me?
Oh,
or is it like,
I don't really get that. I don't get that often.
But you know what I mean? Like, is it, or even just like a priority?
I wouldn't be that intense, but maybe. I just feel like I want to, if I'm going to watch a film and I know it's like kind of tangential to maybe something I'm doing, I'd want to be like, this will be an inspirational piece and I need to break this down.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Or I'm going to kind of analyze this.
Interesting.
I find it really hard. One thing I've like done like a full circle on has just been coming back to watching films again without like a hypercritical lens.
Yeah.
Like as a kid, you watch films, like some of my favorite memories as a kid is like going to the cinema or like sitting at home and watching like, the first Avatar or something like wild like that. And you remember that, those experiences, and you're not really looking at it through a critical lens. And then once you become proficient or you enter into a profession as a filmmaker, you invariably like watch films through a very, you almost feel the camera, like the voyeurism of where the camera is and what it's doing is completely lost and the magic's gone.
Yeah.
So I feel like in the last year or two, I've been trying to come back to like watching a film without being like, knowing there's a light there or knowing there's a camera there or like something like that. I'll be like, oh, that's really interesting they did that. Like try and watch it once and just feel like, what is the emotion of this? What am I like? Just trying to enjoy it really. And then if I want to analyze it, watch it again and I can like stop and start and pause and stuff.
Yeah. Well, it comes back to that concept or theme of like just keeping it playful, right? Like just keeping it fun. Like we're doing this life where we're in the thick of it. Like we may as well enjoy it, And that's why I think I say this on like most podcasts, but like this thing from this guy called Ray Dalio, where it's all around like meaningful work and meaningful relationships and like talking about, how we want to build this life that we want. And his whole thing is like, if you can set it up so you've got like meaningful work, something that you really love, and you're doing it with like really beautiful people. I was like, that's it. Like I look at what we're doing now. Like I get to have a conversation with a really good friend, and our team that's around us, like they're all really good friends. My partner's here, like, and there's a beautiful outcome to that. Like people get to sit down and listen to this conversation. Like, and this is our work, and it has meaning behind it because we actually genuinely can help people that might take little bits and golden nuggets out of this conversation. But I think I personally can get into the headspace of like, go. Like I think I was telling you this morning, like I wake up, I've got to train, and then I've got to be starting work by 6 or whatever, and then we've got to work all the way through, and then managing teams. So it's go. Yeah. And sometimes I forget to like keep it fun. Like I have to actually have the awareness to be like, man, look where you are. Like this is the coolest thing ever. Like enjoy it. And even coming here today, I'm like making a note. I was like, don't try and, because you're thinking about like, oh, is the camera set up right? And I was like, no, the boys have got that, like that sort of, you're like, then we're riding the horses. And you're like, I want to have a really beautiful conversation. It's like, have a look. You're actually riding a horse with one of your dear friends. Like just come down. It can be tricky to like.
Coming into ourselves.
Do you ever have that where you like can get so in it where you forget to have that awareness or enjoy it, the playfulness?
I feel like that's a state that I'm like constantly trying not to be in. You've met my dad, so you know that like I feel like me and him are pretty similar minded. We run like at a quite high RPM. And I feel like the last couple of years has been just a lot of therapy, a lot of understanding how my mind works. Everyone's gifted a different type of mind. It's really up to you to figure out how it works.
Really?
Where it probably comes to a head is when you work in a creative profession, you're kind of just spending a lot of time in that space each day.
Yeah.
You're not like, it's not like a logistical profession or something that's maybe more like hands-on. Like a lot of your day is spent thinking, exploring. So if you're kind of experiencing that freneticness, or you're just struggling with, you can't settle on a thought, that becomes really, really frustrating. And I feel like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of came to be like, okay, I probably need to I'm starting to understand how my mind works, and I need to kind of alter the way I do things to try and accommodate that. I was chatting with a therapist, and we were just talking about how kind of maybe work process works and stuff. And I remember I was sharing me oh, I feel a lot of frustration that I need to be well slept and well fed and enough coffee, but not too much coffee to do these things. And there's so many requirements I feel to be in a little bit of a flow state. Not that I always need them. I can kind of push through, but I feel I'm just too temperamental because you hear these stories of incredible artists from the 60s and 70s that are just partying all night, doing mass amounts of drugs and still able to produce work. And I remember doing this comparative thing of being I'm an artist as well, but I feel I'm the most temperamental artist.
Yeah.
I feel these guys are probably half slept and still able to really produce amazing work and confronting work. And therapist, love her, that I have, really, I think spelled it out really well of, each generation kind of is rebelling against the last and is kind of adapting to rebel in some way or kind of be counterculture. And especially within the artistic movement, we see a lot of artistic culture is catalyzed by counterculture. So it's okay, where's the world moving? Cool, we're going to be counter to that.
Sure.
Just as in the 60s, 70s, 80s, we had these this really nuclear family construct. So artists were rebelling in really, really wild ways. That's where we get Andy Warhols and just artists that have massive characters to them. And it was a real breakthrough for me because she was what you think maybe is a hindrance is actually something that's quite counterculture. You're saying that in the morning, you're trying to slow down. You're trying to slow down your mind. You're trying to be more present in yourself. You're trying to feed your body and sleep well and do all these things.
Yeah.
You see that as a hindrance, but you're actually it's very counterculture if you look at it from a lens of in an era where we're starved of time, in an era where our attention span is what, your devices want and stuff like that. You're kind of being counterculture in your old way of
interesting
presence in a time of distraction.
So what was the learning that came out of it?
I think it was to be a lot kinder to myself and to realize that anything that's kind of hard to do and feels you have to really bear down and focus and you feel you're procrastinating and put it off is generally really worth doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
That is for writing, I write as much as I can, but you can never ever write enough because you're always trying to do other things to get away from it and stuff. And that's been just this last year, a real breakthrough of being wow, I think I always beat myself up being oh, I'm too temperamental. Because if I don't sleep enough, I'm kind of just foggy and not really feeling it. And
it must be hard because you've had the time where you feel really good.
Yeah, you're
and you're
flowing.
and you want to chase that part.
Yeah, exactly.
How do I operate in that part 90% of the time?
100%. And I've worked, I worked as a laborer for a couple of years and as a concrete, and you can have a bad day and just rock up and do your thing.
Yeah.
But when you're maybe kind of what you're doing or what I'm doing, when you're in a profession where you have to deal with people and kind of be switched on, you need to look after yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
I love what you said before around things that are valuable or things that are worthwhile kind of take time. And you kind of alluded to it. And I probably have learnt that probably a lot from your dad and your mum, to be honest, spending a bit more time with them over the last year.
They're amazing.
Man, it's almost things that are really worthwhile and valuable, whether that being a relationship, whether that being something worth of meaning, whether that being a business, or even just building something with your hands, like a shed or a table or something that's I think it comes back into that thing of like, we just want things now.
Yeah.
We want things right away. And then like spending time with them, it's like, no, like the things that are worthwhile, like take time, and you got to invest into that. Like you look at their relationship that they've been together for, you know, however many years when they were younger. And it's like, it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. Like there are going to be difficult times, but the ability to be able to navigate them really beautifully, I think is just like so cool.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think I've been like, I'm really fortunate in, I feel like so many people go through life and never even see like one good relationship,
Man.
you know, and I've been able, like my parents are, you know, some of my greatest inspirations and greatest supporters and stuff like that, but they're also like very deeply in love. And like, that's wild as a child to see from like a very young age. It doesn't mean that there hasn't been tough times, ups and downs, but I think like that's why this place is so special to me. Coming home now, living overseas, just coming home and like spending time with them and getting to see them and their relationship and stuff like that. It's such like a great like northern light to kind of focus.
Yeah. There's obviously like, there's so many keys that I reckon like probably makes a great relationship.
Yeah.
But the one thing that me and my partner were talking about the other day was just like, they just keep it like so fun and cheeky. Like, like you're
always
like, it's always just like comes back to the playful thing. Like obviously like communication, like talking through things, like, all like, I guess like all those things. But there's this fun little part of like just being cheeky and playful. It's like, oh, I don't ever want to lose that.
Keeping it light. Yeah.
For sure, man.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's like, you were asking about maybe like the things that like form me and stuff like that. I think just like being like childlike has been a huge thing. My parents were like not the parents to ever be like time to grow up.
Yeah.
Like, time to do this and that. They're like always been very supportive, but I feel like just retaining a bit of that like childlike curiosity, childlike cheekiness, childlike those things that like as we get older, I kind of they fade away, and people use the term like, you know, that cringe term like inner child. Yeah. But it is there. And I remember reading this book, The War on Art. I read it like once a year or something. It's a really short book, but it's a great book for like just priming you for the year. Talks about this idea of resistance when you're making art, which is like procrastination. Like you want to do this thing, but you need to go and do that thing, so it doesn't end up getting done. But in that, it talks a little bit about this idea of like coming back to just being a child. Like basically every child is immensely creative. Like if you ever spend like, I don't know, a day with a kid, you'll realize like they're pretty naturally creative in the way they see the world. Like everything's new. They don't really know any constructs. So they're seeing everything as like fresh and new, and they're being taught constructs. Yeah. That's like the state that most artistic people are trying to get back to their whole lives, which is just hilarious. We lose it. Like we're trying to come back to a point where we like know nothing and everything is subjective, and you can kind of reinterpret everything. And we already had that as a child. So I think I was just really lucky that I had parents that were cheeky and fun and embodied a lot of those childlike characteristics.
Do you want some more coffee?
I'd love some more coffee.
I don't want to miss this chat around your mum and your dad, because it is like super.
It's an interesting perspective that you don't hear many kids getting to reflect.
Mate, they're in the beautiful balance of like your dad being like high RPM, as you mentioned, like a polar explorer, really successful vet practice. And then your mum, who's like a therapist and like super in touch with emotion, and has helped me and my partner heaps, like just through like random dinner conversations or just going for random rides.
And like, she's so like, she's got that like therapy side to her, but she's like very like, sometimes she catches me off guard. She's like a bit brutal, but in the nicest sense of just being like, she'll just like cut through it. Yeah. You were saying with, you were like writing, smoking. She's like, how you doing? You're like, yeah, really good. She's like, how you actually doing? Right. She does that to me all the time. Yeah. She knows. She knows. She operates on a different level. It's so impressive. It's so good. But yeah, I think like you said, my dad's like veterinarian, polar explorer. We've gone on an expedition together a bunch and stuff. And he's like one of my dearest friends, and I love exploring with him. And then my mum is like, you know, she's adventurous in her own way, but she's like a therapist. I feel like what I gained from probably that adventurous gene from my dad, my mum, I feel like, was that like slowing down, being empathetic, being very intentional and insightful. Yeah. I feel like I got that from her because she's just like they balance each other so well because they're kind of like yin and yang. My dad's like racing around doing everything, you know, like is a very like high octane human.
Yeah.
And my mum still has that element, but she's like a lot more of like, is like a bookworm and loves like sitting and chatting and it's a really like, really enjoys like kind of interpersonal talking. And yeah, like you said, you can't get anything by her. It's so funny having a mum that's a therapist is a night. It's like the best and worst thing ever.
Right, yeah.
there's no like false words.
Yeah, for sure. I know, like I can imagine there'd probably be no like bullshitting her growing up either.
No,
right?
no,
Like you're just trying to get through. You're like,
she knows.
She knows, man.
Yeah,
She
she'd know
knows.
when
But then even like, how does that differ from the learnings that you learned with your dad? Because like I do want to circle around to this idea of like almost like a nice, not a nice role models, but almost like a positive masculinity or like positive male role model. That's where I'm kind of like angling towards this conversation. Whereas like I love it that you've got your mum with this like who's really in touch with your her emotions and other people's emotions, which I can see in you. And then I can also see like your dad who's like very masculine, very much like go, 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 but also likewise has that really like vulnerable, beautiful nature to him.
Yeah.
What were the learnings that you got from your dad growing up?
Yeah, I grew up obviously with having a mum and two sisters. Like I feel like the house was quite like feminine and matriarchal, which I really enjoy. Like I think a lot of Australian houses, if you really analyze them, are quite matriarchal. Like in Australia, we like to, you hear it classically, like guys will be, talking at the pub and stuff like that, pretending like they wear the pants.
Yeah.
As soon as their girlfriend or their wife calls, they're like, going home and they'll
I get it, man.
It's a really, as I've traveled, I've realized Australia's quite matriarchal in that sense.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's where kind of is empathetic and kind of more insightful and probably like, more feminine characteristics came from, which I never wanted to lose. But going on journeys with my dad and having him not just as like a father, but like a mentor and a really good friend, I feel like I was exposed to a really unique form of probably masculinity, which I've kind of come to like call maybe like vulnerable masculinity in the sense of, my dad is like an explorer. It's like kind of like something you would associate with masculinity. Like we have this idea of what a polar explorer looks like. And it's like rugged and hard and doesn't
the ice like grained into the
the snow boogers. Exactly. But just due to the maybe extremeness of the expeditions we were doing, going to Antarctica, going to Patagonia, crossing from Chile to Argentina over the Andes, like heading up to Iceland and recently Svalbard, like these very intense environments that really don't give a crap about your masculinity or who you think you are or who you are. If you go in there with this form of masculinity that I think is becoming more prevalent, I think it kind of maybe dipped away for a bit and I think it's coming back a bit. This really toxic, like we've chatted a bit about this. I'm sure you saw it on the rugby field a lot. Like it's developed because it was useful at some point. But this like real like, I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm just going to push through and I'm going to assert myself as the biggest in this room or this space.
It's like a big ego almost.
Yeah, exactly. Your ego is enormous. It becomes really dangerous on expedition because you're in environments that are just disregard that and it really closes off all your senses to read a situation. I think what my dad has taught me and what other mentors in kind of my exploration have taught me is this approach of vulnerable masculinity where you're building resilience, you're building value and your morals are informing your ethics and stuff like that. And there's those beautiful attributes that like I think young men and all men should be really, really proud of. But it's tempered by a vulnerability to read the environment, to not always have to be like the loudest in the room and stuff like that. And where that becomes really important is when you're, in the mountains and you need to read avalanche conditions, crevasse conditions, when you're in the ocean and you need to know when like, okay, there's a storm coming in 3 hours, so we should drop some sail. Because if you have the big ego and you leave the sail out, you're gonna be like in a lot of trouble. I also think with that vulnerable masculinity, this is definitely getting more existential, but there's an acute awareness of your probably, when you're on expedition, of your mortality. I think if you go into an expedition thinking you are invincible, just by nature, you will make decisions as if you are invincible. We know humans aren't invincible. So I think one of those steps in kind of embracing the masculine side, but keeping a really strong, I don't even want to label it as feminine, because I feel like that's almost its own thing, but just a beautiful, like, tempered vulnerability within your masculinity. A big part of that is that idea of we are just, mere mortals, like, especially on expeditions, like the decisions we make can lead to us having a successful expedition with our team, or can lead to us not coming home.
Has there been any times where you've been out on an expedition where you've genuinely feared for your life and you thought, wow, I might not be able to get through this one?
Yeah, heaps. So many. So many. At 25, yeah, I think too many. Like,
Really?
yeah, like, we sailed in 2023, we sailed from Australia to Antarctica. So, like, looking around us right now, from this to like the
Gnarly.
end, like
So
basically end of the world.
That Project Zero?
Project Zero, yeah. It was a net zero sailing odyssey from Australia to Patagonia and then down to Antarctica. When you sail to Patagonia, it's one of the longest sails you can do on Earth. It was 52 days straight of sailing. So
Gnarly.
you can imagine what that looks like.
Yeah.
Like by day 30, you're just like, I'm so done. Like, let me off this boat. And you have like another like 3.5 weeks to do. So I remember.
But you and your dad got close on that one.
Yeah, we got really, really close. We left Australia in August. We sailed through the Tasman, had a really rough run through the Tasman. It was like, I feel like this happens a lot in expeditions where you're like, first few days are going to be easy. And they're always the worst days. Like, everything's breaking. You're not in your rhythm. You're not working well as a team. And the Tasman was that. We had like a 5-day sail to New Zealand. Yeah. And yeah, just got smoked by a storm.
Wow.
Like, engine broke, sails busted, limped into to Nelson in New Zealand. Limped in, and that was 5 days. I think it's like, maybe like 1/15 of the distance we're about to do.
Wow.
And what makes the Southern Ocean so scary is you dip like down to about 60 degrees latitude. So like, you're really, really low. Sometimes icebergs will float up there. You get snow on the deck and everything.
Yeah.
But you're hopping into what they call the conveyor belt. So there's the latitude 40, 50, and 60. Basically, the wind just rips through there. Okay. You got the roaring 40s, furious 50s, and I don't know what the 60s is. Yeah. Sane 60s or something. Yeah. So once you hop on the conveyor belt, there's no turning around. So we were really at a point of, do we continue on this? Because we've got 50 days. We're going to be the most remote people on Earth. And we just had like a really horrible run. Like, if it's going to be like that, we're not going to make it. Yeah. But we repaired everything, pushed out, and we had like a great 10 days of sailing. Yeah. And I remember standing on deck with my best friend Geordie, who he's a great mariner. He's been, on boats his whole life. And it was just like a really calm afternoon, but really cold. Like, there was kind of like a bit of frost starting to form on the sails. You can kind of feel things kind of icing up. And just looking to the south, like down to where Antarctica would be, just seeing this like black wall of clouds. Whoa. And we'd had a forecasted storm coming in like a couple of days, but this thing hit that night. And at the time, the closest people to you are in the International Space Station as it orbits overhead. So you are like by yourself. There's no land to get to. There's no anchorage. There's no one to come help you. You're in like a 40-foot boat. And we had 72 knot winds. We had like 20-meter swells. Whoa. Yeah. And that night was probably like one of those moments where you're I was chatting to Dad, and he's like, yeah, everyone should suit up. Everyone should get the life vests on. We might have to like abandon ship pretty soon, because we had no sails up. We're still doing our max speed. There's waves breaking on top of the boat. We're like almost rolling.
Does the boat have a capacity on how much swell it can handle?
Dude, it's not so much the swell. Like, a boat could be in like a really, really big swell, but it's how they're breaking. Like, if the swell's just coming up and down, your boat's just going to ride that. Yeah. It's when it carries it and it starts to the boat starts to kind of surf. Sure. Because it'll surf, and then eventually the rudders won't be doing anything. They won't hold it straight, and then it'll turn really hard and roll.
Imagine that would be pretty easy to do in like 20-foot swell.
So 20-meter swell.
20-meter swell.
Yeah.
Far out.
At nighttime, you're out on deck. You're trying to get sheets in. It's like the loudest wind you've ever heard. It sounds like screaming in your ear. And
bro, 20 meters is like a building.
huge.
It's like it's like
Yeah.
it's like a mini
And
building.
at nighttime, you can't really see it. You can feel it, how you're rising and dropping in your gut. But waking up in the morning, I was on first watch with Geordie, and we woke up and just seeing the sunlight come out. It felt like we were in like, it feels like you're in mountains. You're kind of
Whoa.
rising and falling.
So where does your head go that night when your dad is saying, "All right, suit up, we might have to abandon ship"? Like, what do you like? What do you think about?
I feel like a lot of the reflection happens later.
Yeah.
Like in all the experiences I've had where it's been maybe a near miss that was a strange one because you're in a very dangerous situation for like 8 hours. And then that storm went for about 6 days as well. So we were really exhausted by the end of it. But I feel like a lot of the reflection happens post.
Yep.
I feel like that's true for like most things in adventure. I think a lot of people go on adventures thinking like, I'm going to have this like epiphanic moment or this like massive catharsis in my life. I think it happens like you do the adventure, you come home and you're like kind of digesting what just occurred. And the same with like that near miss. Like that was like a very intense, like peaked, near miss. And that gives you a lot more to think about. But honestly, the ones that like stay with me maybe a bit more are ones that just were like, on that expedition, we did like a lot of crevasse movement. And when you're moving through glaciers, they're kind of moving like, imagine you're cooking bread and as the bread rises, it's like kind of, it's cracking and there's like holes and stuff in it. And those holes are crevasses. They can be like 200-300 meters deep.
Whoa.
And then through the winter, snow goes up top, builds these little thin bridges. And then you've got to cross through those glaciers and you've got to figure out like where the bridges are because they can collapse and you'll fall in. That was like, those are the most, I think that though the storms are like intense, when you make it through, you're kind of like, cool.
Yeah.
Like done. We survived. But I feel like it's when you're lying in your tent at night on a glacier or something like that. And you actually the threat is around, it's looming everywhere. But you don't know how close you've been that day. That's what really weighs with me.
Really?
Yeah.
Like almost like the close misses that you aren't really aware of.
Yeah, because it's all under your feet.
Wow.
Yeah. There's stories of, climbing teams. They're out on a glacier. One guy gets up to go to the toilet in the middle of the night, steps out and just like steps in the crevasse, just like disappear.
But how do you know where the crevasses are?
You just learn to read how the landscape's going to push ice and where you're going to see fracturing, where you're going to see like pervasive fracturing. But a lot of it is luck of the draw.
Because I imagine that's probably like a really great skill to learn. Even when me and your dad went out backcountry of Threadbow, it was like an awesome snow season this year. So we had so much snow out there, even at the back end of it. And he was again like explaining crevasses, like we won't go that way because that's probably going to be a crevasse. And I was like, that's so interesting. And it's just like, it could be like couple meters deep, could be like a couple hundred meters deep. It's so interesting how like that, like you make one wrong step, doesn't matter how experienced of a climber or an adventurer you are, one wrong step could be like the end, right?
It's like you're starting kind of, regardless of your skill level, every expedition starts at the same starting point of like beginning and ending.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we chatted about vulnerability. That's where that comes into it. Because you see that arc. I feel like I've seen it with friends or distant friends that I've maybe lost, to avalanche, to rockfall, to just doing things wrong and just making mistakes and stuff. There is definitely an arc there of you just get a little bit comfortable in the environment, or there's a little bit of ego there.
Yeah.
And that can become like really, really dangerous.
Wow.
I think you need to like, it's such a dance, but there needs to be like a healthier respect there, but also a comfortability to listen to it, because you were just terrified the whole time. Fear just turns off all your senses. So you're not going to be listening to how the wind's moving through the rigging, or listening to how, kind of reading the snow, maybe as you're climbing a ridge and stuff like that. But also, if you're not doing those things, it just puts you in such a dangerous situation.
I imagine having been, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I imagine having been in like those really gnarly situations and understanding your ego, understanding like respecting the space and knowing when to speak up and knowing when to just hold your course. I imagine taking that into everyday life would be super beneficial, where you can be just like really centered with an idea, a concept, or even going into an environment or a situation where you don't need to be the loudest person in the room. You don't need to have like a lot of ego, but there's almost like a certain level of like content with yourself where you're like, I don't like, is there a crossover? Do you think?
Like anything in life, everything can kind of make you and break you. Like someone can go through an experience and the outcome can be A, someone can go through the exact same experience and the outcome can be B. Like, I think you could go through a very life-changing, life-threatening experience and not ever ruminate on how close that was.
Yeah.
And it almost fills you with a false bravado of like, I'm the guy that the bullet missed.
Yeah.
Or you go through it, you do a bit of reckoning, a bit of thinking about it, and you actually, you become a smarter, wiser person. Maybe you do attribute some of those attributes of saying like, wow, that was really close. Wow, I'm very fortunate. Well, but sometimes that reflection isn't done. I've been definitely guilty of it. Sometimes you have a climb where you're young and you know, maybe you pull off like a big block and it narrowly misses your belayer. You never really reflect on it. You're just like, yeah, we're invincible, these kind of things. But I think the Southern Ocean storm was a big one for sure for me. It was probably one of the first times I've ever seen my dad scared. I'd never ever seen my dad scared before. And like, I think just seeing him in a position of like, you know, very quickly, when you travel with your dad, there's always that element of like, oh, how you doing, kitty? Like, can you help your backpack? Like, he wants to help. He's like your dad. He's been mentoring you. I think in like a moment seeing that, okay, you're a crew member now. Like, we're in this together. Like, suit up, get ready, because like if we roll, we're gonna have to get the life raft out and we'll get into it. Yeah. That's like pretty scary. But like, without getting into too many stories, I think maybe one of the experiences.
I actually love the stories, by the way.
I
actually really want to
love telling
stories.
stories.
We've been talking about storytelling this whole podcast.
One of the more recent ones, which was really just a we talk about the domino effect in expeditions, how the tiniest decision can trip a domino to the point in which you're kind of in a life-threatening situation. And that's why, decision making and understanding your environment is just like essential, and removing ego, like, is just so important. You know, your objective might be like, I want to get to the top of that mountain. You get to the, the base of the climb and the conditions aren't right. You need to like be like, cool, not today. But if you're just going to push on, like, you probably won't be doing it for very long.
Gotcha.
But there's so many different types of kind of experiences I've had that have maybe like brought me closer to death than other times in my life. But the one that really sticks with me, I think, as one that was just like a fight, was we did an expedition to Iceland. We were on horses and we were going from the northern coast of Iceland, riding inland into a place called the Springasanda, which is like an inland desert. It's flanked by these amazing glaciers that flow up. And then we were kind of curving around down to the south and coming to the largest glacier in Iceland called Vatnajökull. And we'd had a really good ride. We'd been riding for about 10 days and, got to the heart, left the horses there, started pushing up to the glacier. And honestly, it was just a real big disaster. We'd brought a lighter tent with us than we normally would because we were trying to conserve weight. It was something that Dad was like, oh, I normally wouldn't bring a tent like this. And I remember, like, hand on heart, I was like, oh, you're stressing. Like, it'll be so fine. It's a perfect tent. Like, people use them all the time. It was just a way lighter tent than we normally use because we're normally using quite heavy tents because we're pulling sleds. And it was just a really bad call by me. And so we get to this hut, we start climbing up to the glacier, and it was probably like, it was day one, we had some wind starting to come up and the glacier was not in good condition. A lot of the Icelandic glaciers, they reckon, will be gone in the next like century.
Really?
It's completely gone. And it's not like a glacier like you'd imagine with like snow and stuff. It's just this like monstrosity of ice and kind of larval rock poking through and stuff like that, with some of the deepest crevasses I've ever seen, but they're all exposed. You're just stepping over them. First night, wind starts building and we're like, cool, getting the forecast. Okay, it's meant to build a little bit more. Great. We'll like push in. So we probably push in like another 20K or something. And just couldn't find anywhere to camp. And this storm is building and building and building. And we just couldn't find anywhere flat or big enough. Like we're in this labyrinth of crevasses that would just make it really hard to get out at nighttime because you're just at risk of stepping into one. And we end up finding this little pad behind like a mound of ice. We go and set up the tent, and I remember we were putting in the tent pole, and then the thing just tore in half. And the storm, like at that point, was like pretty like basically at like a gale force, with like spin drift coming in, which is like kind of like fine talcum powder snow.
Yeah.
And I remember me and Dad just looking at each other being like, oh man, this is like really, it's gone from like, we were going to set up camp, we couldn't find a camp, to like, it's that domino effect of like, now the tent's torn, now you're exposed, it's getting dark. So there's all these things occurring. And I remember we like took a moment, like, okay, cool, let's weigh up our options. We always talk about like fight and run whenever you're in a situation, other than sailing. Sailing is just always running. That's why I like sailing, but there's never any option to fight. Sailing, you're always just running. You're not fighting the ocean. Run and fight in the sense of like, do you retreat and try and get back to like a safer point, or do you like stand and just like hold fast? And we were like, well, we can't retreat because we're in like this labyrinth of like crevasses, which during the daylight we'd had like some close calls of like almost stepping into them, or just like you're like kind of unbalanced and stuff. It would just be really dangerous. So like, okay, so that rules out ever getting anywhere else. We're just gonna have to just try and make this tent work. So we duct taped what we could and just like kind of propped it up and crawled in our bags. And the storm lasted probably like 14 hours.
Whoa.
And yeah,
and it held?
No. So the tent was completely tore open, and that night didn't sleep a wink. That's probably like the closest I reckon this is the longest night of my life. Like, it was so incredibly cold the whole night. Snow's just pouring in on you. It's gale force. You can't even hear the person next to you. Both lying in our bags. We've kind of like tried to insulate ourselves with like backpacks and gear on top of us, but you can feel probably at like hour 4, I can feel that I've got probably like a foot of snow on top of me. Whoa. And now it's starting to melt, and now it's starting to like really seep into me. And I was just like, you're just kicking your toes, keeping your fingers moving and stuff like that. But I could feel by morning that my core temperature was really, really dropping, and you start to get a bit panicky.
So what do you do in that situation?
I think that's why it stuck with me so much, that situation, because there was a bit of a hopelessness to it. Generally, there's always like, cool, we can go and do this, or we can go and do that. It was such a bad situation that just like occurred in an instant, like, the tearing of a tent in a really, really dangerous zone, that we were really like our backs to the wall. We have no other option than just to hold fast and see if we can just survive the night. Yeah. And I remember I had like kind of nerve damage to my fingers for 3 months afterwards, and waking up the next morning just being like, that was horrible. Like,
but is it almost like another sense of like relief to know like, oh, we actually did survive?
Yeah, totally. But that one was just, the cold is a really interesting thing. You get really lucid when you're kind of going hypothermic, and we were both like deep within hypothermia at that point. Of like, I'd changed layers twice, and now all my clothes are wet because that snow's just seeping in and that wind is pushing in, and you're trying to push it off you during the middle of the night. Yeah, but it's not working, and everything is just soaking. It's probably like -30 wind chill, and you just like, then the danger of just making a wild decision that's just like incoherent starts to come out. But we actually called the expedition there, went back down. Yeah, getting back to a hut, and it feels pretty good that you have survived. But I think there's always just learnings if you're not reflecting on what went wrong there. I remember when I first started kind of branching out and doing kind of my own climbing trips, my own expeditions and stuff like that, especially in young men, I always found it really interesting that like the stories generally that would come up would be like a near miss, or like something like really dangerous. And some like, god awful epic that occurred. And yeah, I just think like the family I grew up in, with the exposure to adventure and the philosophy of adventure that was imparted upon me, I've made mistakes, like that story I just told you was an enormous mistake. But if there isn't reflection followed by that, that's where it becomes a really dangerous thing in exploration, or kind of any avenue of life. If you have a near miss and there isn't reflection of like, cool, what went wrong there? What can I work on so that doesn't happen again? I think there's a tendency to be like, had the near miss, man, I'm invincible. Yeah. Like, that was amazing. That was so cool. Like, that was really exciting, because we associate adventure with danger, life-threatening things. But I really think the pinnacle adventure as I've grown older is kind of being in a really hostile, unfriendly environment and just being completely, in balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like why even make the mistake if we're not going to learn from it?
Yeah.
Like there'll be no point of
Yeah.
even making the mistake.
But there is like adventure's one of the only kind of avenues where it's like, yeah, like some of our favorite stories are like Shackleton, like, and everything went wrong. Like he lost his ship and then he survived for 2 years. We love like everything went wrong, but I survived. That's amazing, like survival stories and stuff like that. But it can be dangerous if you want to have a lifelong time adventuring.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
If you want to, like, I want to adventure until I'm old and gray,
Yeah.
and that requires a different philosophy to like someone that wants to go and have what we call like an epic.
Yeah.
Like an epic, just like the crazy story they're going to recite for the rest of their life. Yeah.
Is it part of that? Because I do want to know like why you put yourself in these situations. Like I imagine probably part of it comes from like your old man, like that's something he's done. You've created your own life and your own path. But why do you adventure? Like what is it about it that is interesting for you?
I think I went through like, obviously I mentioned a very adventurous childhood into, late teens, not really knowing who I was, maybe stepping a bit away from this idea of exploration, adventure, these things that have been a really formative part of my youth. And then like, from like 20 onwards, really coming back to adventure, climbing, skiing, going on expedition with my dad. I think it was equal parts. It was an avenue that led me to really interesting parts of the world. I was always like very enamored with these far-flung places I'd read about as a kid. And then through, building my skills as an adventurer and exploration and stuff like that, I was able to go to these places and experience them. But I think as I've grown older, I've realized I'm like a very spiritual person.
Yeah.
Maybe not like in a conventional like religious sense, but I'm like a very strong naturalist. I think that came from, growing up in a place like Australia where you're exposed to a lot of nature, a lot of wilderness, but also growing up here. And for me, the severity of the adventure is kind of secondary to just where are we and what are we doing and what's the intention behind this.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the ability to put yourself in these like can be really gnarly situations.
Yeah.
The I guess like downside of having like really bad things happen to you is like that's just part of it. If you do want to get to where you want to go and have these really cool experiences.
100%. Yeah. I think just like when you step into a natural environment and probably the natural environments that really interest me are very remote, are very hostile and in quotations. There's going to be some innate danger there to go and experience those places, to see those things. And you need to have a skill set to get there. But yeah, I think as I grow older, I realize that like, just as I really enjoy living in a city at the moment, there's that thing within me that's almost like a genetic buildup or my genetic composition that I need this. Like I need to see over the horizon, to explore, to adventure, because that's the way I was raised and that's who I am. And that was always strange. We know in the last like 20 years with like, Red Bull, North Face, Arc'teryx, like adventure has become like a bit of a hot word and a buzz, and like everyone's going on expeditions. And I love that. I think it's like a beautiful thing that people are going and exploring more. But a lot of that can be like very objective based.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to go and climb Lhotse, or I'm going to go and climb this or run across here and stuff. And I think I always felt a bit at odds with that because just the way I was brought up and the philosophy of polar exploration that was like taught to me by my father, like it was almost like a way of life. Like, yeah, certainly we'd have objectives of like, oh, I'd love to go and do this one day or that one day. But there's no delineation between my life and my adventure, like my whole life.
Yeah.
They bleed into one.
Sure.
And just as, there's imagination, curiosity, discernment, empathy that I'd have to, use when I'm in Antarctica and trying to decide, pick my way through a crevasse field. I feel like the exact same attributes I'd use if I'm on set or filming with someone in some far-flung place. Like, it's only later that I realized like the things that like adventure taught me both as a person, as a male, as an artist, became like some of the greatest assets in my creativity.
Do you think you're a big dreamer?
Yeah, massive. I feel like I'm just always in them, and then I the physicality of like actualizing them is the hard bit.
Can actually, oh really? Like actually making them come to fruition?
Oh, I'm better at it now, but yeah, I feel like I could just dream all day if I could just yeah. I'm a very like in my head. Yeah.
But do you think like, because I'm similar. I think like I love like playing with ideas and concepts, but the thing is that like when you've had an idea and you've seen it all the way through and you've almost like completed the loop, and then you've got the confidence, you're like, oh, I've done that. Yeah. I can do it again. Yeah. And then you do it on like a larger scale and you're like, okay, well, I had this idea and this concept. I've seen it all the way through. It was like a really small thing was like the trail run we did on the weekend, like where me and Alex, who owns Sun Devil Coffee, we were just chatting, and I was like, oh, I love trail run. I was like, it'd be so sick to do like a collab trail run. Yeah. And he's like, well, let's do it. And I was like, okay, well, we could do it at my place and our Western thing. I was like, we'll talk to you and your old boy if you want to come down, ride some horses down, and then say, oh, we got the trail there. And then I was like, okay, we might have 30 people there, and then blows out to like 180 people, like sitting in your backyard, like ready to run a course. And so you do that. That's obviously on a small scale. But you do something on like an adventure scale where you're like, oh, imagine if we were to cross Antarctica. Yeah. And then you do it over the space of a couple of years. And you're like, there must just be like this internal confidence that comes with that, to know that I can actually do things.
Seeing things to fruition. Yeah. I think that's like a better feeling than the adventure itself. Is like,
they're going, oh,
they're going crazy.
That's so cool. I wonder if the mice can pick that up.
Such a wild noise for an animal.
It's so awesome.
Like for such a large animal to have like a weird, they should roar or something.
Yeah. But seeing things through to fruition.
Yeah. Like I think filmmaking, writing, photography, all premised within storytelling. You know, whenever I approach a story, I feel like the hardest bit for me to figure out is, where does it start and where does it end? Yeah. Generally, you know the middle bits. What's the exciting things that happen, the peaks, the drops. And I feel like when it comes to, you know, goal setting and objectives in life, it's pretty much the same. We generally know kind of what we want to do. We have like pretty limited understanding of, you know, at least at the beginning, like, where do I start to like get there, and who will I be at the end of that? Yeah. It's always been like something that I've just been constantly refining, but seeing that arc from like, not even like concept, but like the synaptic, like your synapses firing and a thought coming into your brain to like actually like, you know, being in Antarctica, doing an expedition, that fascinates me. Like,
tell me more about that first step from concept to taking that first step. Because I think about it, I was like, is it a matter of just like starting? Like, is it just like, all right, well, is it just having a conversation with someone who's done it before? Is it like just doing the tiniest little step? Because we know like once we've got momentum and things keep rolling on. What's your process from like the first idea to just starting? Because I think a lot of people can get trapped in this thing of like, got an idea, but I don't know where to start. And then it just fades away and I don't ever end up getting to it.
Something I do like 4 times a year, so like every 3 months, my girlfriend can attribute, because I always drag her in on this, is and it's something I'm fully poaching from my dad. So trademark. Jeff Wilson. Is you know, a dreaming visioning board. And
bro, man, I love this.
Yeah. Did you do this on the podcast?
We didn't do it, but like is like a faith eye image almost.
Faith eye image, yeah.
Tell me more about it though.
It's basically the idea of, my dad has this idea of faith eye image. He's a big visualizer. So even when he's going on expedition, he is imagining that first step. He's imagining what it's like to be in the storm. And he's really, I think he does 2 things. One, it gives you the confidence that you've experienced those environments before in like, you know, your internals. And 2, it gives you the ability like, okay, if that happened, what would I do after that? You know, but coming back to this thing that I try and do 3 or 4 times a year, because you can connect them. If you have a goal, like an audacious goal, maybe you set like a 3-month limit on it, a 6-month, maybe it's a 3-year. If you like put that in the top right corner of the paper, and then you draw a line, a diagonal line down to the bottom left corner, on the top of the line, above the line, put the things you need to do that. Say you want to climb, say you want to climb Lhotse, but you've never climbed before. There's going to be like technical skills, and then you can branch those out into like rope work, like crampons, like how to use an ice axe, all these different things. And then it's going to be like fitness. I need to be like raise my VO2 max. I need to be able to like operate like on like pretty low oxygen and stuff like that. Yeah. Maybe there's kind of like navigational stuff you want to learn. Basically all of the...
Are you all right, mate? Kid's dad just rolled in on a motorbike and started a motorbike.
So funny.
Yeah, you're doing well, brother. See you, mate.
Taking that idea of faith eye image, visualization, such a big part of that is figuring out like, and again, it probably comes back to vulnerability of being like, having a real hard look at yourself and be like, say you want to climb Lhotse. You're like, I want to do that this year or like in a couple of years, something like that. The vulnerability comes in and being like, where, like I have these skills now, like what don't I have and what are the skills I need to do that? They can be hard skills, they can be soft skills, they can be kind of understanding and comprehension. Basically, and I won't just do this for like one objective. I'll kind of do this for like maybe a quarter of the year. I'll be like, these are some things I'd love to do this quarter. Varying from kind of maybe some places I'd love to visit, some experiences I'd love to have, and some things I'd like to achieve. But I'll just grab a piece of paper. I'll draw a diagonal line from the bottom left to the top right. I'll do like, you know, this is like today in the bottom left. This is where I want to be in 3 months or 6 months or a year. On the top of the line, I'll put in those hard skills and those experiences I want to have. If you're going to climb Lhotse, maybe it's like, I want to, you know, have climbing skills. I need to work on my rope skills. I need to understand how to do like self-rescue. And then maybe it's like, I need to understand like navigation. I need to build my fitness. These are all going in as different little, you know, components above the line. And then where I think a lot of people can do that very, very easily. People kind of understand what they need to do.
That's a really good takeaway thing that you can do.
But the static, where people maybe get like static or just overwhelmed, is the next bit, which is below the line. It's like the actionable people, resources, things you can do to achieve that. So it's like finding the 5 best alpinists in Australia. I mean, like, I'm going to reach out to each one of those and chat to them. Finding books like, oh, I should probably read like this training book, or I should probably do like a 3-day course in Mount Cook, and like those kind of things, those actionable steps. It's just like, I feel like as I grow older, there's all these like theories you're thrown out. Everyone has opinions and stuff. Some of them are really complicated. And like nothing amazes me that the most simple approach is always like, like that's such a simple idea. But every time I do it, I'm like, why didn't I just do this every week?
And why do we need to complicate it?
Yeah. Why do we need to do these like big things when it's honestly the simplest approach of just like above the line, what you want to do, below the line, who can help you and what you can do to do that. And you just kind of have this arc that you can come back to, tick things off. And I've been doing them for a few years now, and now I can like kind of connect them all. So I've just got this like beautiful like diagonal line.
Gotcha.
With like,
and so you'll keep your piece of paper.
I'll try to.
And it's almost like ticking them off.
I'll find them all over the place.
Yeah.
Some on napkins and
I've got like 5 different journals going at the moment. I can't find one. I was like, oh, I'll just use this.
Just a new one, just a fresh.
I've got like.
There's nothing better than the first page of a journal. So it's like
100%. But then because I did that for like this project that we got coming up this year. So like we're running all the major marathons in the world, and so core stripping that right back to like, I guess like a core idea. It's like, oh, we want to grow the content, grow the podcast globally. Like we want to have conversations all around the world. How do we do that? Well, what are the things that I'm interested in? I'm like curious about running. Running's popping off at the moment. I love the idea of doing challenges like this, like doing 7 marathons in a year is probably like a bit over my capacity. So it's like a good push. Great, but so it's like, okay, well, if we want to do that, how do we get there? It's like, okay, there's a huge financial piece being able to fly all around the world.
You need like a sugar daddy or something.
Yeah, I wish. Sugar mom. No. But then it's like, okay, well, let's bring some partners on board. Which partners do we want to align with? What does that look like? Okay, there's all these, and then like you got the idea of actually running 7. So it's about building capacity, doing the leg weights, doing the rehab. So you've got like the physical, you've got the financial.
That's a skill, I think, the self-assessment thing.
Yeah.
That some people just really struggle with. Like, but like you could come into that planning session with the biggest ego and be like, I'm a gun. I don't need to do any of this. And kind of lull yourself into like a false sense of like, yeah, I'm gonna
yeah,
crush this. But just by being vulnerable and being like, I'm probably not fit enough. I definitely don't have enough money. Like I could do these kind of things. Just that like that little like glimpse of vulnerability and self-assessment leads you to just growing as a human in like an unfathomable kind of way. Like, and that's true just for so many things. Like even like the mentorship element of what I just explained is such a big thing as well. Like real people, like we do live in an era where like everything is accessible through the internet and YouTube, and you could learn most things through YouTube.
Yeah.
But like nothing beats like a real person. And just being like vulnerable to like reach out to the person that you think is like leagues above you. More than likely they won't get back to you. Like I've had that like my whole career where you just reach out to someone, you're like, I really want to reach out, nothing back. But that's so fine. But you reach out to 10, one gets back to you, and suddenly you've developed a relationship and you're able to like really reckon with someone that maybe is like an amazing climber or an amazing filmmaker or amazing photographer that you really admire, and you can just learn from them.
It's kind of like that. Your dad talked about it on the podcast that we did around like uplinking.
Yeah,
like
uplinking.
Yeah, uplinking.
He's got terms for everything.
He's got terms for
so
everything.
Funny. He's such a term guy. I'm like using like all these like that is a huge spider. Oh, it's gone.
Whoa. We really are right in the thick of it, aren't we?
Yeah.
But yeah, this idea of like, okay, yeah, I have this idea of where I want to get to. Who has been in a situation that I kind of want to represent or kind of want to be like? And then I love what you said around like like almost like the volume game. Like you might reach, like, I think because we can like reach out to someone, they say no, or they just screen you.
What?
Poor me, I was like, oh, fuck. But if you have the idea of like, okay, no, I'm going to reach out to 10 people and one person gets back to you. Like, I think that's probably like, that's a success. Like,
and there's growth in just like the reaching out. When you reach out to someone, you kind of have to verify like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Even that's just like a win in itself. Like,
the
expectations that if someone doesn't get back to me, it's because most people are just super busy.
Yeah,
like,
man.
I'm the worst like texter DMer ever. Like if anyone ever reaches out to me, I'm so sorry. Like I will like try to get back to you. But yeah, I just think people can be busy. It just doesn't work. But like most time, but I'll just preface it with most times it does. Actually, I think 1 out of 10 is actually unfair thinking about it now. I think like if I reached out to 3, always in those things I always had in my mind, like, oh, they're never going to get back to me, never going to get back to me. Most of them did. Yeah. Like, yeah. And even if it was just for a quick chat, just to hear their side of things. And
it can also like, you have no idea of like what one coffee catch up or one experience can lead to. Like it could be a full sliding door moment. Even like our relationship, right? Like I met your brother-in-law Simon back when I was probably like 16 or 17 and I got a ring made up and he was friends with one of my friends. And then, I mean, Simon started hanging out and then I got to meet Jeff, your parents, Sezzy, yourself, your sister, like your family. And now we're sitting here doing a podcast on your family farm after riding a horse. Like 10 years ago plus, you know? So it's like, it's so interesting to know, like you have no idea where life can take you. But I think being open to having those types of experiences or just being open to saying yes to things. I think if you're in that ability or if you're in that situation where you can, I think do it. I think that's a beautiful thing.
I think humans have like a really we're not good at like our perception is like we see great with our like eyes, but like our perception to see the situation we're in really isn't great. Like a lot of our perception of like the situation we're in, something we've experienced comes like after the fact. Like you might be in a toxic relationship. You very rarely realize how toxic it was until you've left it and you're reflecting like, oh, that was crazy. Like, why didn't I see that? Or like we talked about near misses. Like so much of that happens in, you know, the aftermath and stuff. So much of like life is viewed, of course, just in retrospect, of these little, like you mentioned, these little decisions that kind of form us, and we think they're just in the moment. We have no idea that we're making all these decisions and making all these connections and stuff, but it's all interconnected. I think that really fascinates me.
Do you believe that the like everything happens for a reason, or do you believe like you make your own luck, or a bit of both?
I don't know. I think the everything happens for a reason negates a lot of pain and suffering within the world, and also just like really horrible stuff can happen. Maybe it's less that everything happens for a reason, but I think like branching between like my creative brain, my adventure brain, and like there's definitely like a physical, mathematics side to what I do and what I enjoy. There's just like a physical force that governs the world, and there's this wonderful balance of opposites at play at all times. If anything has like kind of like been the theme of my life so far, I think it's just been the balance of opposites. Just as you can't have light without darkness because they're contrary to one another, but they govern and actually define one another. There is kind of this idea of like, yeah, you can't have like innate goodness in the world without badness. It's like it's a really sad thing, and something that I think is like very shocking as like a young person to come across and experience. But I think that's where I've arrived. It's less like everything happens for a reason and more like there's a balance and an interplay at change that's like bigger and more expensive than you could ever comprehend. And in that thing, everything has a purpose.
What do you think's holding you back now from the things that you really want to do?
Well, that's a great question. Honestly, like if I was to be really real with myself, I think just avoidance. I think we like to put a lot of weight on, oh, if I just had more money, if I just had more opportunity, if I just had these things. I think I'm really great, at getting the work done, at sitting in my own thoughts, at exploring concepts and stuff like that. 75% of the time, but there's 25% where I do procrastinate. Like, gonna go and rearrange my wardrobe real quick and do these things. So I think there is an avoidance there that I sense, and I would attribute it to maybe that digital age of just having quick dopamine fixes of, oh, I can go on Reels, I can go to Instagram, I can do some emails, these certain things. But I'm very fortunate, I think, and I don't really view it like a profession, but I really know the direction that I want to explore in my life, which is storytelling. That's the art form that I'm in love with. And it just so happens that filmmaking is kind of the tool I picked up to do that. And coming home, meeting friends, I think I mentioned this the other day, but I meet a lot of people that have so much energy and so much like passion to do something, but maybe just haven't found what really sets them on fire. Because it's like, I'm lucky that like at a young age, I found something I really, really enjoyed, and that like, it just feels like it should feel like a bottomless ocean. Like you could just keep swimming deeper and deeper and deeper into it. I think I'd really struggle with a profession if I felt like, oh, I know I'm going to plateau in 5 years and then I can just like kind of cruise. But chatting to those friends that have a lot of energy and maybe not so much direction, I love like this idea of the compass and the vessel. Most times in life, in like periods where you really don't know where you're going, you're kind of looking at the compass and it's just spinning. It's that idea of everything's really interesting. Everything can be quite distracting. You are trying this for a month, you don't really enjoy it. You're trying that for a month, you don't really enjoy it. But you have this vessel. And I think in that season when the compass is spinning, I just like encourage people, like focus on the vessel, like generally.
The vessel with like your body?
Yeah. Like generally in life, just by nature of growing up, experiencing trauma or going through things, there's like things we can always work on from like a physical idea of like building our bodies to be healthy and well, but also probably coming more into that kind of, emotional, spiritual side of things as well, of having the bandwidth for, we can have a big dream, but if you don't have the bandwidth to actually actualize that. I think about like my ideas of like, these are the projects I want to direct when I was like 19, and thinking about like how much of a shit show it would have been if I'd been given the opportunity. Like someone had just stepped up the street and be like, do you want to come do this? I just had none of the skills, none of the patience, none of the communication skills. And even now I know there's things that I'd love to do and I'm not really there yet. But coming back to it, like in the seasons when it feels like you're lacking direction, you don't know what you want to do, I think coming back to yourself and building yourself to be strong and grounded and ready for when, and it always comes. Like, no, I truly believe that direction and purpose comes for everyone. It just takes time. In the season when the compass is like pointing in a direction that you feel really confident about, there's like wind in your sails and you're like sailing. You want to have like a strong vessel there.
Because strong foundation.
Exactly.
Almost.
Yeah. I think there's that tendency when you're lacking direction to go and focus outwards. Where can I find it? When you're feeling like there's nothing around you that's giving you that purpose or that passion, and you're really like, where am I going in my life? To come back into yourself is, I think, a very, very like wise thing to do.
I really love that. I haven't heard many people talk about it like that, because when I talk to people who I respect or have the similar conversations around like, well, how do I find my purpose? How do I find my passion? How do I find like what I'm really supposed to do in life?
Telling you, go and get out there and experience.
Try, which I, to be honest, kind of worked for me, because when I was playing footy, I was like, liked footy. I knew I wasn't going to do it forever. So I was trialing different things. Like I liked food, and so I worked in like a fine dining restaurant on my days off, and I liked property. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll work as like a mortgage broker and just like I just help mates out. And to be honest, like when I was,
it led to those things.
It led to all this, like, to be honest, but when I finished up, and I was finished up a little bit earlier than I would have liked to, I knew all these things that I didn't want to do. And so I looked back and I was like, okay, I don't want to be a mortgage broker. I don't want to work. I don't want. Interesting. I was like, I don't want to like work in a restaurant as much as I love food. It's just not the vibe that I want to do. And so I ruled out all these things, and I kind of, and it's so funny you said going within, because I started thinking about, okay, I'm 24. What do I want to be doing for the next 10 years? And I was like, oh, I'm actually like really curious around mental health. Like,
which is probably something you wouldn't naturally come across your plate.
It had been a theme throughout like my whole, since I was like 16 or 17, like losing a few friends, and then jumped in with Movember as like a ambassador for them. And so it'd been like this constant theme, and like even wanting to be the guy that friends could have conversations with, like stepping into a NRL environment.
Which would have been, wild.
Like we said, super high testosterone, very alpha, a lot of egos. As we mentioned. And no one was really back. It's changed a lot now, but back then it wasn't really something that people would be having these types of conversations around. And then when I finished that, I was like, oh, this has been like a theme for ages, and kind of went within. I was like, ah.
And it's that reflection of being like, it's always in front of you.
Bro,
it's so funny.
It's so close.
But there's a really great quote. There's a book called Robinson Crusoe, written by Daniel Defoe. It was written in like 1750s or something like that, like a long, long time ago. And it's a controversial novel in many ways, but the basic premise is there's this guy who has it all. He's got like, businesses around the world. He's like the top of his career. He's come from like being a lowborn back in England to, having all this wealth around the world. And just through misfortune, he gets shipwrecked. Everyone on the ship dies, and he is cast away for the rest of his life on an island by himself. And it's a really interesting novel of like seeing how that would affect someone going from like the height of like opulence and hedonism and having everything to nothing. But one of the great quotes in it is, thus we never see the true state of our condition until it's reflected by its contraries. So there's like this man with everything, all this wealth and stuff, but had no idea that he was wealthy. And I think coming back to what you're saying of like, most of the things that like are super obvious to us weren't at the time. Like we look back on them and go like, oh, of course I would get into mental health because it was always a thing. But when you're in the thick of it, it's probably where I'm mentioning like, go out and try new things for sure. But that idea of coming back to the vessel, coming back to yourself just gives you a moment of like peace to reflect. So many people out there, when I like joke, there's probably the next like Da Vinci out there somewhere, and he's probably like a fucking accountant because he just like got told to be one. And I think, not that being an accountant's bad, but like if you're Da Vinci, like maybe not great. Like I think like just it's coming into yourself and having some like thought about who you are and what you are, and just like but it's rhythmic, like you mentioned, like you got to come into that each day, and it can just start with like a small amount of time in the morning of how am I feeling, like who am I going to be today? What am I going to work on today? By starting to enact those like very simple questions, especially as young men, that we know in Australia, like young men are very predisposed to mental illness. We've got really high suicide rates and depression rates. I think like those things not only allow you to have a lot more introspection of looking into yourself, but also maybe start letting you start to figure out, okay, I've been like pretty down for like 2 weeks now. Like, or like, it's probably not normal that I feel this way. I should probably talk to someone. Or like, that's a really hard thing to do. And especially if you're like, we're so good at just like filling the days with stuff. Wake up, probably like feeling anxious, feeling like these big existential things are weighing over us. And we're like, cool, I'm going to go for a run. Or I'm going to go and build something. We're good at distracting ourselves. But I think that's why you mentioned like, you know, you've lost some friends to mental health and stuff like that. I've like lost some of my dad's friends. I've never actually lost a friend myself. I'm very, very fortunate. But I feel like there's that thing of like, it always comes out of the blue. Like you're like, oh, they seem like a really happy, active human. And I think we're so good at moving and doing things, but to stop and like sense who you are, where you are, what you're doing is like a skill that I think a lot of young men, we actually need to build. We're not very good at it.
What do you do? What do you do when things are really tough and you're in a spot where it might be a couple of weeks and you're like, oh, an event might have happened and you're just feeling down? What did you have things that you lean on or do?
Yeah. You know, I feel like I'm giving like a vicarious therapy session. But like, there's this idea of like, and this is kind of the idea of like mimicking nature. Like we have seasons within a year, and I think we have seasons within our lives. We have seasons within like a day. We have seasons within an hour. You know, within an hour, you kind of go through like, you might be feeling like quite hyperactive to quite hyperactive. Like you're feeling at highs and lows. Like, you know, there's those natural things throughout a day where you're like, yeah, I'm feeling good for these 3 hours. And then you kind of hit a dip and stuff. Again, over a couple of weeks, you might be like feeling really like in yourself, really present, really confident. And then you go through like maybe those 2-3 days of like, just like, maybe you're a bit more anxious, a bit more self-conscious. Am I doing the right thing and stuff like that? That is so normal. And I think it's like a really big thing for like everyone, especially young men, to understand that like, that's how it should feel. Like, I think it should be like these big arcs. I think the difficulty is when, and there's probably a fancy name. I think it's called like the regulation window, what I was explaining. Like you're kind of hyper-regulated, hypo-regulated, coming in and out of that. And that's very, very healthy over the course of days. Or if you're kind of doing something stressful, like, you know, if I'm climbing, I'm going to be in a really hyper-regulated state. And then in the afternoon, I might kind of decompress from that. Like I've been in a really stressed, aroused state, and then I'm coming down into something a bit lower. Where it gets tricky is when we have trauma or we're suppressing things, or we have aggression, especially in young men. Like it's something that I've battled with, like not like anger management, but like, you know, you're a big guy, you feel a lot of big emotions, and sometimes you just like, you know, you really find it hard. I remember like 17, 18, 19, finding it hard to like bottle those up. And they just come out in like, you know, not ever in like proper aggression, but probably more directed towards yourself. These really, really big within like, you know, the day you're having a really big high, really big low, and you're feeling that duality. So if we can start to stretch that, that's really, I think, what in my mind I'm always looking to do. I'm not afraid of the lows. I'm not afraid of those days where I'm feeling maybe just a bit lower in myself. Maybe there's a bit of anxiety there. I'm really like sensing like, you know, what am I doing with myself? Because that's what wins you the highs. And the only way that comes from is, for me, is just, that idea of journaling, a bit of meditation, asking these questions. Building rhythm is such a big thing.
But you've got such a good awareness for that, hey? Man, it's because what you're describing is it's so much like there's so much literature and evidence-based studies around what you're saying. Like there's a term they call like the happiness baseline. And the idea that we always return back to our baseline. Like we all have a baseline. Some are higher than others, some are lower than others. You're all individual. But say if you have like a really great high, like you might buy a house or you might get accepted into Banff Film Festival, you might have this really great high. With time, you actually will resort back to this baseline of just being neutral. And on the opposite side of it, on the negative side of it, when we might lose a family member or we might go through a season of feeling really anxious or really bad, or we've had this bad event, this dip, having the awareness to know that with time, we actually resort back to our baseline. And it's so easy to say when
like this too shall pass.
This too shall pass. I love that because when you're in it, it's so hard to see. And you're like, I can't get through this. And I think that's when a lot of times guys get in the thoughts of like, oh, where else do I go? There's nothing else for me. But having that understanding that with time, this too shall pass. And we will actually resort back to our baseline physiologically is a really beautiful thing, I think.
It's so interesting. Like whenever I'm approaching a story, I'll generally start like, concept, premise, themes, characters. And then we eventually get to this thing called the story map, which is like for documentaries, it's generally you shot all the footage and you're figuring like, what is the structure we're going to use here? But why I think it's like interesting from what you're saying of like, we're talking about, we call them in storytelling, we call them arcs. So arcs can be a positive arc, we can have a negative arc, you can have a stasis arc.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the idea of, generally I use them for characters. So like a positive character arc would be like, character comes into the world, believes something, that's tested, now they believe something new. A negative arc would be like, they believe something good, it's tested, now they believe something bad. And then a stasis arc is the character comes into the world believing something, it's tested, and they leave it knowing the same thing. That's like a Frodo. He knows he must deliver the ring.
Yeah.
It's really tested, and he knows he did the right thing.
Yeah.
You connect those all together, all those arcs, and that's how you kind of build a story where it's like, maybe we start really strong, then we kind of dip. And it's so emulating of what we were just talking about, our lives, how they're just the highs and lows. And I think it's the comfort of like sitting in lows and sitting in the highs and building kind of them to not be, I've been in those seasons where you feel like within a day you're going through like 3 of those phases. That's really, really scary. I think. And it's a roller coaster that's hard to get off for a lot of guys. They can go to the pub, put on the brave face, have the high time, go home, you're just crashing to a low point.
Yeah, I think there's definitely that old school way of like suppressing our emotions. And I feel like potentially even these days now where it's like we can, I don't know, I constantly think, because I'm so pro encouraging conversation. Like I think encouraging conversation is great. And I think having that vulnerability to be able to express it with
totally
people, friends, families, people you look up to is really great. But then there's this like little part of me that thinks like there is a time when we do need to get on with it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it sounds like counterintuitive. Like it sounds like they need to be opposite.
No,
but then I think like what you say that it can be
subscribe to that as well. Yeah. I think there needs to be a bit of like, then we're coming back to like balance of opposites, like the key theme here. But just as you need to like sense things and be perceptive, like the greatest person in any role, profession, space, whether it's in sports or arts or sciences, is the person that just gets it done. Like that's the biggest. Like I have so many friends that are so creative, like way more creative than like other artists I know, but they just like sit on work for months or like don't really do it or have been talking about the same process for a long while. And then I have friends that maybe like have a quarter of that creativity, but just are really good at like, here's my idea, explaining it, executing it. And that trumps like the talent or the, the weird art, like auteur artist every day. The person that can just get it done and see a dream into fruition, even if that dream is like a bit misformed, malformed, I think seeing it, to bringing it to life is like the person that can do that. That's worth like more than any talent, more than any technical skills.
I remember your dad used the analogy, like if you're like riding a motorbike and you see like a tree or something, the thing you don't want to do is stare directly at the tree because you're going to
hit it.
Versus like if you look at, like you're aware of the tree, you know the obstacle, you know the challenge, but also knowing where you should be going and actually going to that place. Like a perfect example was when we were backcountry of Threadborough and we were climbing over this kind of ridge with myself and Declan.
Took you for a proper adventure.
It was a proper adventure. And our videographer who jumped on the trip, his sled that because we were pulling these sleds, it was so icy that the sleds weren't pulling behind us. They were actually kind of falling off the cliff and the sled was rolling. So the line was getting really twisted up and your dad was probably a little bit further up than us and we were just there figuring it out. And the side of the cliff was really gnarly. And later on we found out like if you fall off, you probably die. Like you don't make it out of like a drop that big. And in my head, I'm like, okay. And this is like conversations afterwards, after reflecting and coming to this idea. It was like, okay, understanding that we have a really gnarly situation here. We could fall off, but instead of looking at that and like hyper fixating on that, actually looking at, okay, Jeff is all the way up on this ridge.
Yeah.
Let's make the right provisions to be able to get there and move on with
Mm-hmm.
it. And we did. We changed our course a little bit and we got up there. And so it was like, it was almost the perfect motorcycle analogy where we knew we've got this really gnarly thing. It's really hard. Some emotions are flying, but it's like, okay, let's concentrate on what we can control and move on. It's awesome, man.
Yeah, you travel with those people that are like worst case scenario people, and for some reason the worst case scenario just always happens.
Yeah.
It's like when I travel with people that like, you don't want blind optimism, but the optimistic person is like isn't mentioning the radiator blowing on the car or isn't mentioning like an avalanche or what's killing us. It's like you want to travel with those people because whenever I travel with someone that's like, this is like touch wood, but like, I don't know. I feel like the person that's like pessimistically like saying everything that could go wrong. It's good to identify what could go wrong, but just being like, oh, imagine if this happened. By and large, that always happens.
It's like Murphy's Law.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Bro, I've enjoyed this so much.
So nice.
Man, before we do wrap things up, I know we've spoken to like a lot of beautiful themes here. Is there anything you want to touch on?
I think like, as we like, just coming home and you're kind of coming back to memories and spaces that you were in as a child, from like places on the beach to natural environments to even just being in my family home, it gives you like a lot of like prompting for reflection. And looking at these last couple of years from, leaving high school, really not knowing who I was and what I wanted to do, to now being 25, like still fairly young. And I feel like I have a really good sense of, I don't know, maybe filmmaking won't be for me forever. Maybe photography might not be for me forever. But I know I want to tell stories. Like I know that's something that like, it just feels like, I use that analogy of like swimming on the top of the ocean and you could just keep diving and diving deeper and deeper and deeper. There's no bottom to it.
Yeah.
But I look back on like all the experiences that have led me to now and the conviction I feel to, tell great stories. It's always just been an incredible journey, but there's every adventure, every bit of art I've consumed, every mentor I've had has just given you like, they just give you like a little nugget of gold that you can kind of collect and a little learning point. Certainly in the last couple of years, even realizing like in the most like flawed mentor, like people that you let into your life, maybe they're just a bad friend or just not a very good person, like there's still like beauty to that.
Yeah.
There's so much beauty in the world to be garnered. I did a film last year called Even in Darkness about a very prestigious street photographer. And just seeing him work and working with him, it was a really, really interesting project. A lot of different dynamics, a lot of different attitudes and egos, and trying to navigate that as a filmmaker. But coming back to this photographer's work, he'd shot on the streets of New York for 40 years plus, and had really seen like, the darkest phase of New York to gentrification to where it is now. But I love that film because I think one of the like resounding themes in it is kind of there's beauty in everything, even in the ugliest side of a city, in the ugliest side of like poverty, addiction, gentrification. For someone to step into that with a camera and be like, I'm going to try and show like the beauty of this place and the beauty of the people within it and the culture and community there. I think it challenged me as an artist to, whatever we see with our eyes is often not always the actual story at play.
Yeah.
And that everything holds beauty in its own way. So yeah, I think that's been like something that like has been, I really want to hold on to that in like these next few years as I'm like approaching bigger stories, approaching bigger projects, to just remind myself like both in my own life that there's beauty in like the hard times, in the arduousness of it, in those low points we talked about, but also, as I travel, as I was in Iraq last year shooting in a place called Mosul, which, had seen some like maybe the toughest conflict on earth, even in like the depths of like some of the most like bombed out, war-torn areas there's just so much beauty in life. Yeah. Because it just can't help. The world can't help but be beautiful. Man. So, yeah.
Dog, I love that, bro. I think that's a beautiful place to finish up, man.
Let's finish it there.
Dog, thank you.
Thanks for letting me just ramble on.
Nah, man, I've enjoyed this whole experience, from us coming in here yesterday afternoon to setting up what the visual is going to be look like. If you're listening to this podcast and you want to capture what it might potentially look like check out the YouTube. I think we'll put a YouTube out on like obviously this conversation, but then all the stuff that we've done prior. I think I've loved like setting this place up. I really loved the ride that we did this morning. And I've loved this conversation, man. I'm keen to spend more time together. I think you're going to be in London next year for the marathon.
Yeah, I think I'll be there for the marathon this year.
Sorry, this year. Right, imagine
next year. I was like, wait a second.
I'm still back in 2025. Man, I'm keen. London would be so sick to link up here.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll link up.
Done.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you, bro.
So good. Thanks heaps, Keeks.
Yeah, bro.